It is officially the final countdown to one of the best and spookiest holidays, which I'm very excited for because I have some shenanigans planned, and I hope you do too. But until that day comes, we are watching some scary movies. So here are 10 that will help to create that special holiday mood. I wish you all a very merry spooky season. Also, here are some sensitive topics if you need them or something. I did have a dream after watching this movie where I had merged with my dog the same way as that guy. You know the one? It wasn't okay. It's not okay. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a sci-fi horror movie from 1978 that was directed by Philip Kaufman and stars Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Veronica Cartwright, Jeff Goldblum, and Leonard Nimoy. The story follows a health inspector in San Francisco who discovers that an alien race is replacing humans with matching biological clones that lack humanity and the ability to have empathy. It explores themes of conformity and an individual's role in society during the aftermath of the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal, but I'd argue that perhaps it is a good and relevant watch for audiences nowadays. This is one remake that I actually love more than the original. I just really enjoy the idea of an alien who comes to Earth in the form of a spore that remains undetected for a while due to taking the shape of a plant. This fits in really well with the themes of apathy and consumerism, which the movie explores. Would the same conclusion happen in a society which places more value on our natural surroundings? I also really enjoy the cinematography and sound design of this movie. The way the camera frames characters in shadows and fractures their image through broken glass, distorted reflections, and even plants mirrors the anxiety surrounding identity in the movie, and the zoom-ins make it feel as if the characters are under constant surveillance. The sound effects, which were done by Ben Burtt, who is also behind creating the original Star Wars sound effects, add so much to the ambience of the movie and work really well with the editing. What do you think of this movie? Do you prefer this one or the one from the 50s? I'm just saying, if anyone is looking for a nighttime radio DJ who works from a lighthouse, hit me up. I don't even care if there is a ghost infestation. I'll deal with it. You don't even have to pay me extra. It's fine. No Halloween would be complete without a ghost story, so we are going to take a peek at The Fog, the 1980 independent supernatural horror by John Carpenter. Starring Adrienne Barbeau, Tom Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis, Hal Holbrook, and Janet Leigh, The Fog follows the strange events that happen in a small coastal town when a glowing fog appears along with some vengeful ghosts. What I find scary about this movie is how, as a viewer, I am unable to personify the evil which is looming over the characters. Yes, there is a backstory that explains where these revenge-seeking entities are originating from, but for most of the movie, the viewer is confronted with a faceless and uncontrollable natural occurrence. This is why cinematography plays an important role in creating the unsettling ambience. To me, The Fog is a stunning movie that always sucks me in, not only because of the story, but because of how the vast environment encompasses both the characters and the fog. I'll always remember how captivated I was with The Fog while watching this for the first time as a teenager, and how I immediately looked up how it was created once the movie ended. The filmmakers used wide shots of the town to create a blacked out shape to mimic the layout of those shots in a studio in order to film backlit fog moving in that space.
So what we got was a fog that would react to these large buildings, but move in a flowing motion, seemingly with purpose.
The Fog went through quite significant changes and reshoots in the post-production period, as the editing revealed that the story was not working as well as the filmmakers had expected during the initial production. If you're someone who is interested in the process of filmmaking, I really recommend you check out the making of for this movie. as it is a wonderful example of how the creative process isn't always linear and how it is actually possible to turn around a project if you feel like you've hit a dead end. Him turning into a werewolf in an adult movie theater, it's just good writing. There's no denying it. Next up, another one of my favorites, the 1981 comedy horror movie An American Werewolf in London. Directed by John Landis, who also directed The Blues Brothers just a year before this. The movie follows David and Jack, two American backpackers who get attacked by what appeared to be a wild dog while exploring the English countryside. David ends up in a hospital in London, and after he is informed of Jack's death, an undead Jack starts appearing to him and telling him that they were attacked by a werewolf and that David too now is one. So be aware of the full moon, David. Be scared. Be very scared. There's a charm about An American Werewolf in London, which I really enjoy. And I'm not sure if it's because my experiences living in the UK for 5 years just makes this type of scenario happening entirely believable to me or what, but I just really like the overall mise-en-scène. The dream sequences are handled in a really interesting way. I love how in one dream, David's hospital bed appears in the woods, and to be honest, the machine gun dream is, I'm actually not sure how I'd describe it, because I think my brain just represses it after each time I see this movie, so it's certainly something. Overall, the makeup and visual effects are really fun to watch, and the initial transformation scene is definitely one of my favorites, which I just think about it because the editing is great. I love it. I also love how Jack's appearance gets progressively worse each time he appears. But undoubtedly, the scariest part of this movie is when the nurse character goes, "I'm just a working girl, so don't expect too much," while discussing inflation, and then she's living in a fully furnished flat with multiple rooms, alone, in London. What do you mean? How? We are so cooked. I think my soul would just yeet out of my body if that canister leaked on me. I would... Gone. No movie. Dead. Immediately. I would... There's no shower that can help with that. This is definitely a movie that I wish I would have seen earlier, because I would have loved this shit as a teenager. Written and directed by Dan O'Bannon, The Return of the Living Dead is a comedy horror movie from 1985 that popularized the idea of zombies eating brains. So you know, it's peak cinema. In the movie, two employees at a medical supply warehouse accidentally unleash a toxic gas from military drums that starts to reanimate the cadavers stored in the building. Along with the warehouse owner, they seek help from a mortician to burn the body parts, but the situation quickly gets out of control when the gas from the crematorium creates toxic rain that itself reanimates the entire population in a nearby cemetery. You ever have a bad day at work? I had a bomb threat during a first shift once, but it wasn't as bad as this. This is way worse. What I really love about this movie is the character design, especially when it comes to the group of teenagers who are partying in the cemetery. With such a big ensemble cast, there's very little time to go into detail about their lives, and yet each character has a unique presence within the whole. Most of the kids in The Return of the Living Dead had very little experience in the movie business, but their performances are snappy and tonally consistent, most likely because the movie was shot in sequence, which helped to build up their emotional reactions. These three guys are also absolute legends in this film, and they do such a fantastic job playing off the younger characters. It just makes such a well-balanced cast and a chaotic storyline that keeps me captivated every time I've seen this movie. I also love how the filmmakers approach the living dead. They're spooky, yet imaginative enough to create an interesting setting for the living characters to react to. If you're interested in the creative process of character building, I really recommend checking out the behind the scenes of this film, which you can find on YouTube. It's really fun and insightful. Have you seen The Return of the Living Dead? What did you think about it? Which is your favorite dead guy? There's so many good ones, I don't know if I could even pick one. Cage looks like a Trump in this movie, and thematically on point, but it just makes it so much more disturbing. In the 1989 dark comedy Vampire's Kiss, Nicolas Cage plays a literary agent named Peter in New York City who gets turned on by a bat that attacks him. This leads him to some extremely erratic and dangerous behavior as he explores this event with his therapist and tortures his secretary. Normal stuff. There are just so many moments in this that make me laugh out loud, even though the character himself is such a terrible person. Cage is just so captivating as this character, and I love the physicality he brings to the role. At the same time, Peter's childish narcissism makes his psychosis absolutely terrifying. Keep this guy away from me, please. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm very biased when it comes to this movie because it is my favorite Cage performance. The narrative themes and visual style help to balance out the over-the-top characterization, and I think this is what makes this one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. In the notes I took while watching this, I even wrote down that the title sequence has very sexy cinematography, and to me, this beginning perfectly sets the scene for the spectrum that Vampire's Kiss explores. From the heavily controlled hyper-performativity of capitalism to the uncontrollable, egotistic sensual desires that this environment arises in Peter. Is a vampire only categorized by the drinking of a victim's blood, or can its parasitic tendencies show up in other ways in our society? Is it a vampire's true nature that explains their behavior, or should they be held accountable for their actions? How do our societal systems uphold these kinds of tendencies? I know this type of movie isn't for everyone, but if you're someone who enjoys movies in the vein of American Psycho or The Cable Guy, you might find this fairly entertaining. And to anyone who's about to psychoanalyze my opinions on this film, I'll leave you with this. Blah 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 blah. Okay, focus. If I do this now, I can get a snack after. Just think of pirucas and you can do anything you put your mind to if you think of pirucas. I can talk if I want to. I can talk and talk and talk. I can talk and talk and talk and talk, and I can talk and talk and talk. This is one of those rich people are weird movies, but I'm actually pretty sure it's a documentary. It has all the signs of being a documentary. Before I give you the description of this movie, here are some of the notes that I took while watching it. What the f***? Oh no. Oh my f***ing god. No, 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 no. And I laughed a lot, but also, what the f***? Society is a body horror movie from 1989 that stars Billy Warlock as Bill, a teenage boy from Beverly Hills that starts to suspect that his family is involved in a strange cult with other societal elites when he hears an audio tape which sounds as if they were engaging in a murderous normal stuff, right? Totally fine. Directed by Brian Usna, who is also the producer of Reanimator, which I discussed in my other Halloween video, and the co-writer of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. What a legend. Society depicts the rich as a shape-shifting species that use lower classes as nourishment. When I was researching this movie, I found this excellent Medium article by Colin J. McCracken, and in it he describes that the film was a massive success in Europe, but had American audiences a bit stunted due to the unwillingness of masses to accept that there was any social divide in America at the time. I also loved reading Warlock's description of the production of the orgy scene, and you can pause the video if you want to read it. I think is pretty funny, especially considering that he did not have a fun time doing this scene. Honestly, I don't have much else to say other than I did have a fun time watching this movie. Not sure what that says about me, but if you're a fan of body horror, then you'll probably have a good chuckle watching this, or you'll be traumatized it really just might depend on your socioeconomic background. So beware, be aware, be woke, all that jazz. Lastly, this is a really niche reference and most people won't really reach this part of the video anyway, but to me it's canon that this is why Eddie was such a traumatized in Baywatch. Also, Shawnee deserved better. That's all I will say on the matter. Now let's move on to the next movie. Thank you. Ooh, suburbs, nuclear families, Randy Quaid. Spooky. Ooh. Have you ever suspected that things aren't quite like what they appear? Well, in the 1989 directorial debut of Bob Balaban, a 10-year-old boy in a 1950s California suburb grapples exactly with this thought. Parents is a dark horror comedy movie that follows the anxieties of Michael, a socially awkward child who suspects that his parents Lily and Nick have some cannibalistic tendencies, which leads him to have strange dreams. I honestly relate to this kid, not only because I think American-style suburbs are prime locations for spooky things to happen, like a stray person might appear out of nowhere and talk to you, but because I remember being 6 years old and being so suspicious when my relatives placed sylt on family dinner tables. You cannot and will not convince me that sylt is something that anyone should put in their body. But I am also someone who was severely brainwashed by Lisa Simpson, so what more can I say? Even though the movie was a box office failure and remains mostly forgotten by larger audiences, it has still gathered a cult following due to its uneasy and slightly surreal vibe that reminds many viewers of David Lynch's filmography. I personally love the dream sequences in this film, and I really enjoy the set design. There's just something about the homogeneity of the 1950s nuclear family that really sparks instant discomfort. So the events that happen in the movie, they don't really feel so far-fetched at all. What is your neighbor hiding behind that white picket fence? Will conformity keep you safe in your own home? Or will your subconscious ring the alarm bells before it's too late? If you're still unsure of whether you'll be interested in this movie, then this Ebert clip will surely make or break it for you.
The movie is finally and basically just a very dark and depressing nightmare, a bizarre excursion through disgusting images. It's the kind of movie where you sit there and you have a really, really creepy bad time.
I only hope someone reviews my movie like that someday. Every time I see Kathleen Turner, my brain just instantly goes, ouch, my balls, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. This American satirical dark comedy from 1994 got mixed reviews from critics upon its release, and did not break even in the box office. However, since then it has gathered a steady cult following, so let's cut this open and see what lies beneath the surface. Written and directed by John Waters, Serial Mom follows the deranged antics of Beverly, portrayed by Kathleen Turner, a housewife who lives with her husband and 2 children in Maryland. To outsiders, Beverly seems to live a modest upper-middle-class lifestyle, but soon it becomes apparent that she has a vengeful temper as she removes anyone who threatens her picture-perfect nuclear family delusions. The movie satirizes the fascination for true crime stories that American culture holds, and the media circus that follows due to moral panic and the commercialization of sensational stories. This movie holds a special place in my heart because it was my first John Waters movie that I ever saw. I believe it was one of my oldest friends who I've known since we were both 13 who introduced it to me, and we have since then revisited it a couple of times, and we have had fun during each viewing. Well, this wasn't the first time that Waters depicted the archetype of an American housewife gone bonkers. Think Polyester and Desperate Living. I believe Serial Mom is stylistically more accessible for an average moviegoer, due to it being one of the few of his films that was produced within the Hollywood system. Regardless, it faced a tumultuous post-production due to studio executives being put off by the dark comedy and violence. In a 2022 interview with Jim Hemphill, Waters explained, "It was horrible. The studio hated it even though it was exactly the script they had bought. But the movie's out there, and it's gone through so many different owners and moved from studio to studio, and it just came out again on Blu-ray, so somebody liked it. Over the years, it's gotten more and more accepted, and I don't know, can you make all your money back just showing on TV every Mother's Day? That's where it ended up." If you've seen this movie, what do you think? Was this a box office bomb because it's just too real and viewers couldn't handle their own reflection? Does the cult following show that this is changing? Let me know in the comments. I'm not saying that I definitely would, but maybe I would use AI if it came with that funky Igor oil painting with the googly eyes. You know what I mean? Directed by John Flynn, BRAINSCAN is a science fiction slasher from 1994 that follows a teenager named Michael, portrayed by Edward Furlong, who finds out that a horror game called BRAINSCAN is creating horrendous effects in real life. The movie explores themes surrounding trauma and neglect, as well as the effects that video games and horror media can have on minors. Is this a terrific movie? I wouldn't say so, because in my opinion, it is tonally a little all over the place, which is most likely why it bombed in the box office. However, I did think it was a fun watch in terms of the mise-en-scène. Trickster, who is the main villain of the movie, does have very memorable character design, and I definitely would prefer not to come across him in the wild. Also, the computer graphics are cool, and the metal horror 80s aesthetic should be in more movies. It's very nice. Nice combo. Personally, I love finding movies that I have a mixed reaction to because that's usually when I have the most interesting time digging through its reviews. And it was fascinating to see how this film's audience has such a unified opinion. This Letterboxd user's 2 reviews probably best encompass what the average horror movie fan's reaction is to this movie. People don't consider it to be too good, and yet they cannot help but rewatch it at one point. So if you have seen this movie, what did you think about it? What is it about this movie that makes it memorable to you? And what would you have changed about it if you were the filmmaker? To be honest, the ice cream selection in the UK is abysmal. I get why Shaun was like that. I understand. To finish this list off, we are going to visit one of the ultimate fan favorites, the 2004 zombie comedy Shaun of the Dead. Directed by Edgar Wright and starring Simon Pegg, who also wrote the screenplay together, Shaun of the Dead follows Shaun, a sales advisor in London who gets dumped by his girlfriend Liz. After drowning his sorrows at a local pub with his best friend Ed, Shaun's already weary life faces another downturn as London gets overtaken by a zombie apocalypse, and the chaps are forced to gather up his loved ones in an effort to escape. I cannot understate the effect that this movie has had on me. I saw it for the first time probably around 2007, and it became a major source of jokes for my middle school friends and I. To this day, I have the DVD I got as a teenager on my shelf, and if I were to name 10 movies that influenced me to pursue film studies, this film would definitely be on it. I love the writing and edit of this film. The way the characters do not realize a zombie apocalypse is happening is hilarious, and the fight sequence to Queen is one of my favorite scenes in any zombie movie ever. While numerous film scholars link this movie to the general Western cultural consciousness in the wake of 9/11, I find it a fascinating rewatch post the events that happened in 2020, which shall not be named, especially in reference to infectious disease control. What is it about the Western lifestyle that makes us so desensitized to apocalyptic events? Do these events even matter before they disrupt our habits of consumption? Does the world as we know it really have to end in order for us to address our own passivity? Now, I'm not saying that Shaun of the Dead will answer these questions for you, but it certainly will be a wonderful jumping off point to dive into these reflections when it comes to your own life. That's today's 10 movies. Have you seen any of these? Which is your favorite? What are you gonna watch on Halloween? Ooh. Let me know. down in the comments. Goodbye.